Hello, Lee. Welcome to the Subtext.
Hello, Savannah. Why does that tickle you?
I think it's just funny to welcome you to your own show.
It's our show?
Yes. And I think that's funny. And we both just discussed how we had so many meetings before this.
Yes.
And I do feel that I clawed through hours of meetings to get here.
Yes, me too. Me too. But it's good to be here.
It's so good to be
A
here.
relief from the meetings.
A relief from our revolt against the meetings, if you will.
That's right. That's right.
Well, how are you feeling? What are you bringing in today?
I'm feeling good. Lots of good work going on. Lots of wonderful people to meet and talk to and connect with. So it's good. How about you? Other than the meeting?
Other than my meeting
hangover.
fatigue.
Yeah.
I have been told by 2 people in the last 10 years that I've worked with that I have something called communication fatigue.
That you have communication fatigue? What does that mean?
I think
What are they communicating to you by saying that?
The way that I
That
understood
you're
it.
exhausting to talk to?
No, that I get exhausted talking to other people.
Well, now I feel really good about the upcoming conversation when you're coming in exhausted of talking to other people, and now you're going to be moreover exhausted talking to me.
I'm bringing in myself with a 10 out of 10 energy. Like I said,
Yeah.
No communication fatigue. No, and I'm really excited. Today it's been cold. I'm wearing a jacket.
It has not been cold. It's been cool. It's a nice autumn crisp. It's almost cold enough for me to start burning fires in my wood-burning
In your wood-burning
stove.
Yes.
Yeah. I almost did it this morning, but I decided to wait.
I do feel it would have been okay.
Yeah.
But you would have been pushing the limit a tiny bit.
Yeah, I would have pushed it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, well, what have you been reading, watching? Anything fun? Listening?
I always have a huge pile of books that I'm either I've got for fun or for work. But I think as far as things I have been especially attending to is Malcolm Gladwell has out a new season of revisionist history called The Alabama Murders. And I was first especially interested in it because I'm in episode 1. And so I wanted to see what it was all about.
Did you feel like you had done a good job? Oh my gosh, I'm nervous.
Yeah, I was definitely nervous because I was talking about my Alabama religious heritage and I didn't know if I would bother some people, which I've not heard from anyone that I bothered so far. I've only heard from people that have sent kind greetings. But I would highly recommend not only without reservation, with like serious commitment to applauding what Malcolm did in this episode. I would suggest to everybody listening, go listen to the new season, Alabama Murders. And it fills me with the same sort of set of feelings that I read after reading Anthony Ray Hinton's book, The Sun Does Shine. Anthony Ray Hinton was on death row for 30 years for a crime he didn't commit. And it is one of the most exasperating, infuriating, and hopeful books I've ever read. And listening to Malcolm's episode, it was infuriating, it was exasperating, and it's something that people ought to be aware of. And the way our systems are so fundamentally broken.
Yep.
And Malcolm did such a beautiful job with it. And so I just could not recommend it more.
And you're a star of it.
I am one minor player.
A co-star.
Yeah, I am a minor player in Malcolm's storytelling.
That's so exciting. So is it one episode or is it a whole season?
It's a whole season, seven episodes. Yeah.
And you were in episode 1?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And is it a modern story or is it, you don't have to give anything away?
It starts off with a murder in 1988 in North Alabama.
Okay.
A preacher that's involved in a murder in 1988. And so an affair and a murder. And so then it goes from there. So,
what more could you want from the story?
Yeah, it's really something.
Wow.
How about you? What are you reading and listening to?
Okay, I just bought a book this morning. Do you know the book James by Percival Everett, I think is his name?
I do not know that book.
Let me fact check myself. Yeah, it's Percival Everett. James is a rewriting of Huckleberry Finn from the perspective of James.
I have heard about this book.
It won like a bunch of awards last year.
I've heard about this book, yeah.
Yeah, so I just bought that this morning to read, which I'm super excited about. I read Liz Gilbert's new book this past week.
What's the name
of it? It was a wild ride. It's called All the Way to the River.
Huh.
I don't even know if what I'm saying, it's not a recommendation, me saying that I read it, but I did do it. And
Okay.
I made it through 400 pages. And at several points, I don't feel an obligation to finish books at all. Like, in general. Like, if I'm in it and it's not interesting, I'm done. But I kept on kind of questioning throughout, for what it's worth, should I keep reading this? And I did.
But you did.
And I don't know why. I feel very complicated about it.
Yeah.
Actually, if you read it, it could be a whole episode.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
A very complicated book.
Yeah. Well, with that strong non-endorsement, I'm not sure whether I'll read it or not.
I would feel weird endorsing it if that says anything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, I would feel weird being like, hey, you should go read this, because I don't know that it...
You're not sure.
No, I'm not sure
Yeah.
what to say. It has a lot of like addiction stuff and codependency. But you talked last week about how you were reading The Courage to be Disliked.
Yeah.
And that combined with Jen Hatmaker's memoir, which talked a lot about codependency, combined with Liz's book, which talked a lot about codependency, does have me thinking about that, which is one really positive thing.
Well, and I also, that was the other book I thought about mentioning, was that I recently read on a flight back from the UK. I read The Many Lives of Mama.
Yeah.
The Many Lives of Mama Love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Many Lives of Mama Love. By Laura Love Harden, and it's also a lot about addiction and all the madness and craziness that goes with it. And that one I do highly recommend. It's a really great book.
Maybe that can be our recommendation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also what I'm hearing is that we might need to read some lighter stuff soon.
Maybe so.
It's also intense. With that,
yes,
let's start the show. Before we start, if you like what we're doing and want to help us get the show in front of more people, do us a favor by following and rating our show wherever you listen. Leave a review, give us 5 stars, hype us up. If you want to watch full video episodes, you can also find that on YouTube and Spotify. And then if you want to boost our Instagram numbers, which I know Lee is really concerned with.
Very concerned.
You can follow the show at The Subtext Show, or you can follow me at Savannah_Locke or Lee at Lee C. Camp. And if you have any questions or suggestions or complaints for the show, just DM us on Instagram. It's not a big deal.
DM Savannah at Savannah_Locke on Instagram.
And there is a 30% chance you might get a reply since I am currently underground, with DM/text messages. I have declared bankruptcy, as they say. DM the show because you're more likely to get to the right people. But thanks for following along.
Indeed. Thank you.
Lee, today we are talking about a controversial subject.
Yeah, well, imagine that.
Which I feel like we've kind of been playing it cool.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah.
And then I have just kind of been haunted and wanting to talk with you about this Super Bowl halftime show situation and maybe what it says about the broader culture wars that we find ourselves in.
This should be an interesting conversation, Savannah.
I think so too.
It fills me with a bit of trepidation.
Same.
Maybe as much trepidation as talking about Taylor Swift.
And since we tackled that and no one seemed to get mad, we can move forward with confidence.
Let's do it.
Okay, so for anyone who has not been necessarily paying attention, Bad Bunny was announced as the Super Bowl halftime show's performer for this year. And after that happened, Turning Point USA, which is this conservative nonprofit, created something called, quote, the All-American Halftime Show. So this was done in response, apparently, to Bad Bunny being announced as the halftime show artist. So Bad Bunny is from Puerto Rico, and he is regularly in the top listened to artists in the world. I actually think for 2 years in a row, he was the highest streamed artist in the world, like above Taylor Swift, above The Weeknd, above Justin Bieber, all the people. So this halftime show claims to be a celebration of faith, family, and freedom. And I just want to say a couple things I noticed and would love to hear your thoughts. So number one, Bad Bunny is American. He's from Puerto Rico. Fun fact, my mom, growing up, spent a lot of time there. And she's still fluent in Spanish to this day. So love Puerto Rico, have been many times.
You've been many times as well.
Yes. And Bad Bunny can confirm is American.
Yes.
And I have been to Puerto Rico, which is part of America. Okay. Number two.
That is a fact, of course, that many people overlook or are unaware of.
That are unaware.
Apparently
unaware of. Okay. Number two. There have been at least 14, and I fact-checked this myself, at least 14 halftime shows with performances from artists who are not American. So that includes
who were certifiably non-American.
1,000%. Unless Bono was secretly born in Maine, yes. So we have like U2, Shania Twain, Rolling Stones, Coldplay, Rihanna, Shakira, The Weeknd, all of these people, not American.
Okay, Shania Twain, she's not U.S. citizen? Canadian.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same with The Weeknd, I believe.
Okay.
And Shakira, who she did a halftime show with J-Lo a couple of years ago when it was in Miami, she sang a lot of her songs in Spanish. Also worth noting. And then last thing I noticed is when people, so I went to the website of the All-American Halftime Show, and you can fill out this form to stay updated, like whenever they announce who the artists are going to be. And once you do your name, email, and everything, you can fill out a form to request music. And there's
request your preferences for the music from the All-American show.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like, this is what I want to see in the All-American show. And so there are different genres of music. But the first option was, quote, anything in English. So you have anything in English, and then you have like Americana, country, hip hop, pop. And that has a very strong message behind it. But those are my 3 ponderings about it. And I am sure that you have more.
Yeah.
Go forth. Tell me what the vibes are. Tell me what's happening.
Go forth?
Yes.
Go forth. Well, I mean, I did, knowing that we were going to talk about this, I did do a little bit of reading this morning, and I came across this just today. The Rolling Stone had an article that they posted in the last 24 hours entitled "The Right's Reaction to Bad Bunny Performing in Spanish at the Super Bowl is Ugly, but Not New." And then it does this fascinating historical overview of the ugly backlash to Latino and Latina performers at places like the Grammys, at other sporting events. So, you know, their storytelling there was just saying, look, this is not surprising. And, you know, I think the earliest one that I remember them talking about was from the 1960s and then forward. And so clearly the anything in English, it's hard to interpret that other than some sort of swipe at Latina performers and culture.
Yeah. And what is the message? Like, yes to the swipe, yes to the dig. What is the broader messaging behind that? Do you know what I mean? Like, what is the broader messaging behind this backlash that you're noticing?
Well, I mean, you know, I would make up that it's clearly one more episode of where everything is politicized and in which we are continuing to solidify these hostile partisan positions, and this is yet one more of those. So the so-called culture wars is obviously one of the ways this gets referred to, but it seems that that's clearly what seems to be bubbling up here.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that, like with this culture war thing. Like, what is a culture war, and how did we get here?
How would you define the culture wars?
Here's the thing, is that I Googled a lot because I was like, I know a culture war when I see one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like kind of hard to name. And to me, and I don't know if this is accurate or whatever, like I kind of like did a deep dive into like the history of culture wars, of how people are talking about, like, to your point, like it's basically digging deep into partisan divides and then using different things that happen in culture to basically pummel against each other.
Yeah.
So this is what it reminds me of. This is going to be such a me way of defining something. But do you know how, like, if I was in a fight with you and we have this underlying resentment and we don't talk about it for 20 years, and then Sophie, one of the producers of the show, walks in here and I use Sophie as an excuse to dig at you. Does that make any sense? So for me, a culture war is like anything that takes the place of Sophie. Sorry, Sophie, for using you as this example. But like any sort of landmine or detonation or trigger can become a culture war between us instead of us actually like having to work on our relationship. Instead, it's like the culture war is like this third party piece that becomes a reason for us to continue fighting with each other. That's how I think about it relationally.
Yeah. So instead of having an honest discussion about differences, that you try to remove the freight of emotional hostility and really deal with whatever the issue is, you find some sort of mechanism just to keep lobbing hostilities at each other.
So it's like the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. I remember growing up, it was Starbucks cups. Instead of doing Christmas cups, they called it holiday cups.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a huge deal for my family. We stopped going to Starbucks because they're taking the Christian piece away.
Yeah.
So it's like the Starbucks cup is Sophie, instead of us dealing with each other, instead of us really being able to name our resentments. Or it's like Netflix. Recently, people started pulling their subscriptions from Netflix because they posted content they didn't like. That all, to me, is this like third part of a triangle. Like, it's like a weird triangulation instead of just like actually having real and honest conversations.
I mean,
how would you define it?
Well, I guess first, a little historical background.
Nice.
I years ago, when we were doing, we do variety shows, and probably at the I don't know how many years ago this would have been. 10, 15 years ago, we went and did a variety show in the courthouse where John Scopes was on trial in the famous Scopes monkey trial in East Tennessee.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we had like a Pulitzer Prize winner author talking about the trial. We had Rachel Held Evans talking about, her who grew up in Dayton, talking about her theological formation, development, and the evolution of that. And it was a fascinating experience, remarkable. But one of the things that Ed Larson, the Pulitzer Prize winner, talked about, and then numerous guests that I have interviewed through the last number of years, when we talk about the culture wars, quite a number of times the Scopes trial has come up. And they'll say that's where the culture war started, was right there in Tennessee.
You're kidding.
With the Scopes trial. And for those who don't remember, the Scopes trial was the state of Tennessee legislature, in my mind, got involved in stuff it ought not be getting involved in, dictating, that they couldn't teach the theory of evolution, the theory of evolution with regard to the human species in public schools. And so there were a group of people that decided, well, we're going to test that and try that. And so we'll get this coach named John Scopes to teach it in his biology class and then bring in all the lawyers. And it became this huge hullabaloo. It was the largest trial to date. Hundreds and hundreds of people show up in this small town of Dayton, Tennessee. Thousands and thousands of words telegraphed out about the trial. It was just this amazing, incredible experience. But one of the main lawyers, William Jennings Bryan, what's so fascinating about this is that William Jennings Bryan was the fundamentalist who wanted to read the Bible literally in the book of Genesis. And yet William Jennings Bryan was one of the most liberal candidates for U.S. president ever in the history of the United States. 3 times he was a candidate for the United States. He was a fan of just about all sorts of leftist causes, right? He loved labor. He was critical of economic policies that hurt the poor. He was nigh unto a pacifist, and here he was running for president, and he was a fundamentalist critiquing the teaching of the theory of evolution in public schools. And so these days you look at that and you think those things don't go together at all, right? But what happened was that coming out of that trial, he and the opposing attorney, Clarence Darrow, very much matched up with each other on social issues. But Darrow was an atheist. Bryan was a Christian and a conservative interpreter of Scripture. And out of that, there came this increasing coalition of causes that have gone with the conservative side and the liberal side, and it's continued to evolve through the last number of decades. So it's the history there is fascinating.
That is fascinating.
Second thing I'll note is that one of the professors who had a lot of impact upon the way we use the word culture wars is a guy named James Davison Hunter.
Yes.
And Hunter wrote a book named Culture Wars. It came out in the 1980s, early 90s, I forget exactly. And he basically makes the case that what you have in the culture wars at that time in the United States is the right and the left are arguing over different ways to interpret freedom and limits on freedom, and then they're trying to use power to impose their vision of liberty upon the others. So very quick, a couple of quick examples. So one would be if you define freedom as freedom to do what you want to do, which is a problematic definition, by the way. But if that is the way you're going to define freedom, right?
Very Lee camp right there. Yeah, go ahead.
If that's the way you're going to define it, conservatives, for example, would say freedom is let me do what I want to do with my money.
Yeah.
And a liberal would say let me do what I want to do with my body.
Yep.
Whereas the conservative is going to say, no, we must put limits on what you do with your body. And the liberal's going to say, no, we must put limits on what you do with your money, right? And so what Hunter did is he opened that up and he showed all sorts of examples like, this is amazing, right? It's that they're not arguing over some of the basics like whether or not we accept the notion that we ought to maximize individual liberty. What they're arguing about is when you limit it and when you make it as expansive as possible, right? And then they're both trying to use power to impose their vision upon the other side, which I just found super fascinating when I read it way back in seminary days.
To dominate the other side kind of into submission.
Right.
Yes. For their specific view.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Am I crazy for kind of thinking what you just said also works with this like Sophie theory?
Tell how.
Like for me, and we can't go into the moral foundations theory, but that's kind of what this is hitting for me is like what you're talking about with like the right and the left. First of all, Scopes trial, brilliant, amazing, and love that idea of that being the history. Now going on to the freedom piece. Like both sides want freedom, like could agree, like we want freedom on some level. Of course, we have to fine tune, like, what does freedom mean? And we have to like work through disagreements. And I think our lack of ability to do that goes back to me and you resenting each other, because I think in some ways, a lot of people have a lot of shared values that there would be disagreements on, but some shared values. But because there's not an ability for whatever reason to be able to actually meet each other and critically think about each other, then the detonations come with name your culture war here. And so it's like, what by name your culture war, I mean, this is how you should spend your money. Or bodily autonomy doesn't count with this issue, but it does count with this issue. And so I think that the detonation and like the triggering and the like, it just all feels like an electric fence. But I think it comes down to like us not being able to speak well to each other. Something I feel like we're just missing each other.
Yeah.
Please disagree with me if you do. But I feel like there's such a relational component and an emotional intelligence component and an ability to disagree and a tolerance for disagreement component that I don't want to miss in the conversation.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
No, I definitely think that in so many of these arguments, there's complete passing like two ships in the night, right? Where the kind of conversations just aren't even trying to have a productive conversation.
Yes.
And that so much of the culture war stuff is trying to win points, one up the other one, rhetorically, verbally, cherry picking the crazies on the other side.
Always.
Rather than really focusing upon the best proponents of a given view on the other side.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I definitely agree that there's all this sort of picking at each other rather than honestly trying to engage an issue.
And I think it's a way for us to exempt ourselves from doing the hard work of trying to understand people that don't agree with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's, yeah. But then when you go broad, I also think people are profiting off of culture wars.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that one of the historical examples of this is a different kind of notion of profit, but when you think about power as profitable, Randall Balmer that we interviewed on No Small Endeavor a number of years ago, he has out a small little book called Bad Faith, and he's looking at the rise of the moral majority in the 80s. And what he argues in that book pretty convincingly, and I've seen other people argue and say similar sorts of things, what he argues is that with the rise of the religious right, you had among some of the key players a pushing back against federal power, and they especially didn't want the federal government to push them on breaking down racist policies that they had in their Christian private institutions. And so that when, in this late 60s, early 70s, and then when Roe v. Wade is passed in 1973, that evangelical Christianity did not get up in arms about Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
And even, so he cites, for example, these stories from some of the key people publishing, for example, in Christianity Today, which is the flagship evangelical magazine, in which they said things like, abortion is lamentable, it's regrettable, it's not a healthy or a good practice, and we don't endorse it as a kind of go-to practice. And yet there may be certain cases in which that's the best scenario, right? Yeah. And so there wasn't this kind of, we have to do whatever we have to do in order to stop this, right? But there was a sort of liberty given to people to make their own kind of moral judgments about this. It's not until you get to the late 70s, early 80s that abortion begins to be the thing with the rise of religious right, because there are people that realize what you can't keep playing off of the explicitly racist practices. So you need something that you can pull people into a coalition of power.
Yeah.
And they started doing these tests, and they realized we can get a lot of people to solidify around the issue of abortion.
Yeah.
And so they use the issue of abortion to make that the thing that they can then congeal this sort of religious right movement that then, pushes the Southern Baptist Sunday school teacher of Jimmy Carter out of office and brings in Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to think about the way that, and that's one of the things I think people ought to be asking all the time.
Yes.
Is who is profiting from getting us so worked up about this particular issue?
Enraged.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether it's on the right or on the left, who is profiting from allowing us to get so worked up about this issue?
Finally, my brain is working as you're talking. Freaking love that, Lee. That's brilliant. And that goes a lot to the research that I did with Beth Barr for our podcast, All the Buried Women, which is all about the Southern Baptist Convention.
Which is a great podcast, by the way.
Thank you. Okay, so basically, the Southern Baptist Convention archives are in downtown Nashville, and Beth Allison Barr and I went and spent tons of hours doing research in it. And the story we were primarily following was something called, what in Southern Baptist history, it's called the conservative resurgence. And so this started in the 70s with two men, one of whom was not even Southern Baptist. He was a Presbyterian minister and judge who just saw an opportunity with the SBC to gain a lot of political and religious power, named Paul Pressler. And then Paige Patterson, who was SBC and really cared about what he called the liberal drift, where he saw people in the 1960s and 70s with the feminist movement and all of that, thought that the SBC was becoming liberal. Okay, so these two men basically lean into this moral majority piece, which I think was also already happening, with Jerry Falwell and all of it. This was already kind of a thing happening, but then it was just oil was poured on the fire through the SBC, which is the largest Protestant denomination in America. And basically, over the course of the 70s, they do this insane political strategy where they basically send out delegates from every state, and they recruited two people from every state, a layperson and a pastor, to become the mouthpieces of Paul Pressler and Paige Patterson, so that when they said, hey, here's who you vote for to be president of the SBC, that these two people in each state would then tell all of their representatives, this is who we're voting for. And it was all done in the name of, for them, they would say biblical orthodoxy is their umbrella, but underneath that was being against women preachers. And then later on, the abortion thing, which is so interesting because I went back and read all the resolutions from the SBC. And when Roe v. Wade first came out, the SBC was so chill in their resolution about it, where they did make a resolution. And to your point, it was very I think it was something to the effect of this is sad that this happens, lamentable, and also we should support people in these decisions, and kind of left it to let people and pastors and communities and women make these decisions. But it was in no way what it is now. But then after this conservative resurgence is successful and happens, and the Southern Baptist Convention is in bed with Republicans, then the SBC becomes a mouthpiece for being anti-abortion, and then that becomes kind of a core tenet for being conservative, being Christian, for being SBC. And that was not the case before. Literally, and it all happened within 15 years. It was crazy to see before my own eyes, these resolutions and how they changed, and how, in my opinion, they were co-opted for political and power reasons by selective outrage.
Yeah.
Which is just,
That's so...
We were touching on the hottest of topics, and I'm just now thinking, oh my gosh, there are so many qualifiers I want to add here, but we'll just let it sit.
That's so helpful. I mean, first, I would just kind of say as a parenthetical here, right, there's loads of things to be said about so many of the things we've already brought up. So, what do you mean by biblical orthodoxy? How do you think about, so-called woman's right to choose, the practice of abortion, pro-life, all those sorts of things. There's lots to be said about that, and we're not trying to say all that needs to be said about that.
No, we are not.
And on and on and on with all sorts of issues. Right. My primary thing I'm interested in right here is the historical contingency around these things.
Yes.
Right. So in other words, what you see in what you just described about the Southern Baptists in the early 1970s regarding Roe v. Wade, or what I also described. In other words, what you see there is that it could be different than it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
So then ask the question, well, why did it turn out the way it is right now?
Why did it turn out that way?
And it may be that the answer is not as simple as, well, finally they saw things right.
Yep.
And instead it may be because there was power at play.
Hello.
And that's the question you want to ask, I think, right?
Yes.
And so going back to the Scopes trial, there you also see historical contingency, right? Here you've got this far left socio-political guy, William Jennings Bryan, who loved Jesus, loved Scripture, very, very conservative in the way he reads Scripture, and yet he's a pacifist and cares about policies that are going to support the poor, right? And there what you see is, oh, well, those alignments are different than they are today.
Mm-hmm.
And then ask the question, well, why?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
What happened historically to make those things different, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember so well when I was calling that Pulitzer Prize winner, Ed Larson, to see if he would come all the way out from California to come to East Tennessee to do this show that we were taping. And I was talking to him about the history of the Scopes trial, and he was talking about William Jennings Bryan and so forth. And he said, you know, evangelicals used to be opposed to war.
Yeah.
And he said, that's what everybody used to know them for.
Yeah.
He said, but of course, nobody thinks that anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So then the question becomes, well, why is that true?
Why is it?
Right?
Yeah.
It could be different. So ask why.
Yeah.
And by asking why, all of a sudden you see very, very different sorts of things. Yeah. One other example I'll give here, you could think about nationalism. And moreover, you can think about Christian nationalism, right? Well, in the early part of the 20th century, I think I alluded to this on an earlier episode of the Subtext, but in the early part of the 20th century, you know, one of the most outspoken Christian nationalists was Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, a mainline Protestant, right? And a racist.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's like in the early part of the 20th century, I think a lot of more conservative Christians would have looked at kind of Christian nationalism and had a lot of reticence about that. But then by the time you get to 100 years later, now the mainline liberals have lots of problems with Christian nationalism, and now the conservatives seem to be think that you can't be Christian without being a Christian nationalist. Yeah. Again, ask the question, why? There's lots of stuff to say about the issue in and of itself. Yeah. But we're just asking the question, why do you end up with these sorts of alliances, and who has something at stake? Who are the power players that are messing with us in order to try to get us allied on these causes?
And all of us are being messed with.
Yeah.
Like, all of us are being messed with, and all of us are, I literally call us bait. Like, we are bait for rage, where people are constantly trying to get us upset at other people, think other people are stupid, think other people are, like, not human, because there's some sort of profit in it for them. Yeah. Which is no joke.
No, there is no joke. I mean, another episode, sorry, but I just keep thinking about the fellow who just talked about him. You know, another recent episode we had on No Small Endeavor with Garrett Graff, who just has done brilliant work on looking at the internet and social media. And, you know, and what he lays out so well is, it's the algorithm of anger, right? It's the algorithm of anger. And people didn't set forward an algorithm of anger simply for the sake of setting forward an algorithm of anger. It's set forward and put in place an algorithm of anger because it made them money. Yeah. Because they knew the longer they can keep your eyes on that screen, the more advertising that they can sell, and then all of a sudden all their profits go through the roof, right? Yeah. And so how do you keep your eyes on? Well, algorithm of anger. So that, as Garrett tells it, you know, Facebook at one point realized that if you click dislike or anger on a post, that's worth time-wise, how you're going to stay involved, 5 times worth you clicking a like symbol. And so all of that stuff is going to get prioritized in what comes into your feed, right? And so again, ask yourself, who's profiting from this? Yeah. Who's making money off of this? Yeah. And that at least can give us some sort of space to say, well, maybe we could step back and try to have some sort of rational conversations about the issues rather than just lobbing crap at each other. Yes. Yeah.
That's dark. That's dark to think about, isn't it? It's dark to think about.
It is dark, but the evidence for it seems to be pretty incontrovertible.
Great word. This is why they pay you the big bucks. It's reminding me, you know how I got on my George Orwell phase?
Yes.
Okay, so when I read Animal Farm, basically the concept of Animal Farm is that a bunch of animals revolt, overthrow the farmer, and then they get to run the farms themselves. Yes. But then the animals start dividing among themselves, and then there becomes the same hierarchy that they were working I actually just explained that fairly well
you
in
did.
2 sentences.
Indeed.
But what they come to find out is that the pigs, who were the animals at the top of the pecking order, they were sowing discord among the other animals on purpose to make them mad at each other so that the pigs could stay in power. And obviously, this is like political satire from Orwell. But this is what this reminds me of. And I think that for me, when I think of culture wars, I think of who are the pigs, and I do not mean pigs in a negative sense, but just in the animal sense from Animal Farm. Who are the people that are intentionally sowing discord so that we stay arguing with each other so that they stay in power? Because that's what culture wars typically are. They're less about actual, like, oh, this is a really important issue, like the Super Bowl and halftime show. That is intentionally furthering a divide that keeps some people profiting, and it makes the people on both sides feel self-righteous.
Yes.
Who is profiting off of that, and how do we get out of the manipulation so that we can have more complicated conversations around what we're talking about? Like when, in this case, I guess what it means to be American with the All-American Halftime Show.
Yes.
You know?
Right. So as you're talking, I was reminded that so with the Rwandan genocide, like a million people get slaughtered over 100 days.
Mm-hmm.
And between two tribes, the Hutus and the Tutsis. And at the time, or at some point in the 20th century, Rwanda was like seen as the most Christian country in Africa.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But what doesn't get talked about very much that I think is incredible to consider is that the colonial power that had control over Rwanda was Belgium. And the power brokers in Belgium, when they came into Rwanda, asked the question, how can we keep control of this place? And they explicitly went about stoking the animosity between the Hutus and the Tutsis. And then what you have years later is this blow up into this genocide. And that ought to be a lesson for all of us. Look, it doesn't matter how much Christian language you're throwing around.
Yep.
There may be power players who are trying to stoke hatred between you, and it can come to horrific ends.
Yeah.
Don't play with the crap.
You're right.
Right? And realize there are a lot of people with a lot of power and a lot of money that may have a lot at stake in getting you to hate somebody else.
You're exactly right.
And they'll use all sorts of culture stuff, all sorts of pious stuff, all sorts of flag waving stuff, all sorts of stuff to get your heartstrings pitter, 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 patter. Right? But they may be doing it to get you to hate somebody else because that way they have more power and control over you and everybody else.
You're exactly right. You talk about that in your book. It was the book I read 2 times ago. So the last one I read was the scandal one. The one before that is Mere Christianity.
Mere Discipleship.
Oh, dang it. C.S. Lewis was Mere Christianity.
He stole his title from me.
He stole his title from you, exactly.
Yeah.
But another criticism that you had of that is that Rwanda being like the most Christian, like where everyone was like, this is such a good thing. And you were like, but what kind of Christianity wasn't able to infiltrate their own hatred against each other? Which I also think is like a really pertinent question for now, where it's like, what kind of Christianity do we have where we can't in any way cross partisan divides and learn to love our neighbor as ourselves, even our neighbor who disagrees? So that's the first thing that I thought of. Once again, plugging your book, Mere Discipleship. And then number 2 is thinking about bot farms.
About what
which
farms?
People don't talk about bot farms enough.
Bot
farms, like in Russia.
I don't know bot farms.
There are bot farms everywhere, but the New York Times did this insane piece on
bot farms. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Like on bot farms, where basically there are countries now who have entire divisions and sectors devoted to planting misinformation and stoking outrage online on their foreign enemies or on their own countries.
Yes.
And this is proven, this isn't like a conspiracy. This is real. And that every time we go on the internet, we are facing not just real people, but also bots that are trying intentionally to keep us mad at each other.
Yes.
And that's worth noting as well.
Yes, exactly. And that reminds me, going back to the Garrett Graff interview that we did on A Small Endeavor, one of the things he was talking about, because he talked about the Russian bot stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that there's a comparison that can be made to what the Soviets did with propaganda during the Cold War.
Yeah.
And he said he quotes some leading researcher on this, who said a lot of these campaigns looked very similar. That is, the campaigns of Russians using Facebook and social media to sow discord and chaos in 2016 and following. She says, a lot of these campaigns look very similar to what we know the Soviets did during the Cold War, which is most of the time they're just trying to create chaos. Creating chaos means trying to get people to be further entrenched in their views and trying to push whatever happens to be divisive. It doesn't really matter to them. There's an expression, she goes on, there's an expression in Russian, putting a whole bunch of spaghetti on your ears. What it actually translates to is that you're trying to tell a whole bunch of lies and get people to not believe in anything. Their focus is not to get you to believe anything in particular, but it's to get you to believe nothing at all. And I thought, man, right, if we're not aware of all of this hostility and the chaos that people are trying to stir up, then we're getting played. And I don't like getting played.
I don't like getting played either. So let's bring it back to this halftime show and talk about how this could potentially be like a culture war issue, how it could be the third part of the triangle. And let's talk about like different ways to think about it. So maybe you can start.
I don't want to start. You're the pop culture expert, not me.
Okay, so here's what I think about this, honestly. To me, the All-American halftime show could be a great opportunity to talk to people who are super excited about it. And say, like, why does this excite you? What do you feel like this is serving? Like, why do you think that we need this? Why do you think it's called All-American? Why do you think on the form it said anything in English? Like, what does that say? Like, is Bad Bunny not American? Like, to ask those kinds of questions and go a little bit deeper. And then on the other side of things, I think that it concerns me that for something that for however many decades at the Super Bowl, it's probably been around for a lot longer than decades, but like everyone has kind of just been okay with having the same halftime show for the same event this whole time. And I think it's a concerning signal for things to come. That's what also like it makes me feel. So I think it could be a good opportunity to have conversations that go deeper and that maybe don't focus necessarily on, the things that are not the thing. We need to go below the thing. So I think it could be a good opportunity, but I think it's also a concerning signal of things to come that I just am not into. Because I think that what it's a signal for is that people are starting to associate All-American with white, that people are starting to associate All-American with English, that people are associating All-American with faith, freedom, and family, or whatever the things were that they had, and that is becoming an increasingly narrow view of what it means to even have like fellow citizens. And I think that is concerning to me.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that at a minimum, surely we can ask those questions, right?
Yeah.
And we ought to be able to ask those questions. But I'll tell you as an academic, that's one of the things that terrifies me about the current political moment in which we find ourselves is that, and again, this goes back to the way in which issues migrate from one party to the other in the culture wars. Right. So, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, one of the critiques of the right, of the left, was political correctness and how much speech was policed. Yep. Right. But now what's happening is when somebody else is in power, speech is getting policed from the right perspective. Right. Yeah. And, I mean, it seems crazy to me to look at some of the things that has been told to people in higher education about what you just simply cannot talk about. It's like, what do you mean we cannot talk about it? This is what we do as an educational institution is we talk about things. And so I don't like it if somebody on the left tells me that or somebody on the right tells me that. It's like, I thought we believed in First Amendment rights to speech.
To be able to talk,
To be able to talk, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea there is that, again, the issues can migrate depending upon who's in power and the power play. So, yeah, I think that all of those questions that you ask are great questions that we ought to be grappling with and things that we ought to be asking. And going back to your very first point about what if we see this as an opportunity to have some good conversations?
Yeah. I
think that's great. Because I continue to, as anyone listening can tell, right, when I get to some issue that is dear to my heart, I love it. Animated. I get animated, right? But animation is not always the best way to have a conversation with somebody with whom you disagree. And a better posture of having a productive conversation with people with whom you disagree, I think, is like you were saying, is curiosity.
Yeah.
And you just lean in and just ask questions. And
What
it's
is
sort
this
of,
giving to you?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Why do you feel excited about it?
Why is this important to you?
Like, did you know that all of these other shows hadn't been, like, from Americans? Like, why do you think that this one's different? Like, just being able to, like, get curious and try to get below it, I think could be a productive way of dealing with this specific culture war.
And, and it's quite possible that, I mean, one of the things that I've learned through lots of years of doing, as I say to people, doing theology in the Bible Belt is like a contact sport. I mean, there's a lot at stake, and people will come after you, right? But one of the things that I've learned is that if you'll present things in a sort of non-aggressive way and try to lay them out and have a conversation about them and raise questions that the other person hasn't had an opportunity to think about, a lot of times what happens is that people don't get defensive in reaction. That very often what they say is, I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. And that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so rather than assuming there's going to be hostility, why not try to assume goodwill on the other person's part and then try to have a conversation about it?
Yeah, like unwinding some of the antagonisms that you go in with so that you come in neutral and have less of, of a high frequency experience, a high frequency event,
Yes. Well said.
Yeah.
Great conversation.
Great conversation. I might have gone too far, but that's what culture wars are all about.
About going too far?
Here I am trying to lower the temperature, and then I'm like raising the temperature on every hot topic issue.
So again, you can direct message Savannah.
Oh my gosh.
At Savannah_Locke.
If you disagree with any of my takes, honestly, I might disagree with them too. I might.
Yes. That is another thing that I often tell people that when they'll say, I disagree with you. I say, well, I often disagree with myself as well.
Same.
Yeah.
Do you ever get nervous? As a side note, this might be interesting, but I'm finding it's very difficult for me to actually say what I think while being recorded.
Well, I think in the day and age in which we live, if one is not at least giving some thought to that, then one might be lacking prudence. Right. So I think it's just a part of the deal is that you have to think about what you're willing to say in public and what you're not willing to say in public. And know that there are consequences for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And also wanting to, like, I think what I really want from the show is for people to know that, like, we're in process and we can change our minds and disagree with ourselves in the future, and that they're allowed to change their minds, and that there's also, like, a human piece to it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I would say at a minimum, I would hope that the community that continues to grow around what we're doing would be a community in which we all assume we're all in process. And we're all trying to listen to each other. And we're trying to take facts and science and theology and the goodwill of creators of whatever sorts of pop culture content.
Yeah.
We're trying to take all of that honorably and seriously rather than just merely shooting from the hip at whatever culture war thing might be standing on the other side.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that. That's a great ending. Approved.